إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله أستغفر الله إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي صلاة العشاء الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وعافنا واعف عنا في الدنيا والآخرة إنك على كل شيء قدير اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنه ليس لي علم بموضع رزقي، وإنما أطلبه بخطرات تخطر على قلبي، فجول في تلبه البلدان، فأنا في منى طالب كالحيران، لا أدري في سهل هو أم في جبل، أم في أرض أم في سماء أم في بر أم في بحر، وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من، وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك، وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله، واجعل يا رب رزقك لي واسعا، ومطلبه سهلة ومأخذه قريبة، ولا تعنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقه، فإنك غني عن عذابي وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله وجد على عبدك بفضلك، إنك ذو فضل عظيم. اللهم صل على محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا من أرجوه لكل خير وآمنه سخط عند كل شر، يا من يعطي الكثير بالقليل، يا من يؤتي من سأله، يا من يؤتي من لم يسأله ومن لم يعرفه تحننا منه ورحمة. أعتني بمسألة إياك جميع خير الدنيا وجميع خير الآخرة، واصرف عني بمسألة إياك جميع شر الدنيا وشر الآخرة، فإنه غير منقوص ما أعطيت، وزدني من فضلك يا كريم يا ذا الجلال والإكرام، يا ذا النعماء والجود، يا ذا المن والطول، حرم شيبتي على النار. اللهم صل على محمد.
Inshallah, ziyarat will be after the program. If brothers and sisters would like to settle in, inshallah, we'll start the program shortly. Per Muhammad wa ali Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تبارك الذي نزل الفرقان على عبده ليكون للعالمين نذيرا، الذي له ملك السماوات والأرض ولم يتخذ ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك وخلق كل شيء فقدره تقديرا. واتخذوا من دونه آلهة لا يخلقون شيئا وهم يخلقون ولا يملكون لأنفسهم ضرا ولا نفعا ولا يملكون موتا ولا حياة ولا نشورا. وقال الذين كفروا إن هذا إلا إفك افتراه وأعانه عليه قوم آخرون فقد جاءوا ظلما ونزورا. وقالوا أساطير الأولين اكتتبها فهي تملى عليه بكرة وأصيلا. قل أنزله الذي يعلم السر في السماوات والأرض إنه كان غفورا رحيما. وقالوا ما لهذا الرسول يأكل الطعام ويمشي في الأسواق لولا أنزل إليه ملك فيكون معه نذيرا أو يلقى إليه كنز أو تكون له جنة يأكل منها. وقال الظالمون إن تتبعون إلا رجلا مسحورا. انظر كيف ضربوا لك الأمثال فضلوا فلا يستطيعون سبيلا. تبارك الذي إن شاء جعل لك خيرا من ذلك جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ويجعل لك قصورا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا عليه. At this time, I'd like to invite Brother Salman for recitation of poetry with the Allahu Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. جکڑا ہے بیڑیوں میں زہرا کا یہ گوہر ہے. جکڑا ہے بیڑیوں میں زہرا کا یہ گوہر ہے. کاظم ہے نام اس کا حیدر کا یہ پسر ہے. جکڑا ہے بیڑیوں میں زہرا کا یہ گوہر ہے. مظلومیت بھی رو رو کے بین کر رہی ہے کہ بین کر رہی ہے. سن پائے گا کوئی کیا کس میں کہاں جگر ہے. جکڑا ہے بیڑیوں میں زہرا کا یہ گوہر ہے. گزری حیات ساری ہی قید میں ہو جس کی ہی قید میں ہو جس کی. لاشا بھی جس کا تنہا پل پر پڑا ادھر ہے. جکڑا ہے بیڑیوں میں زہرا کا یہ گوہر ہے، میت اٹھانے آیا کوئی نہ 3 دن تک، کوئی نہ 3 دن تک، دنیا میں جیسے کوئی رہتا نہیں بشر ہے، جکڑا ہے بیڑیوں میں، زہرا کا یہ گوہر ہے، اور زنجیریں کھا گئی تھی مظلوم کے بدن کو، مظلوم کے بدن کو، آل نبی نے امت سے پایا کیا ثمر ہے، جکڑا ہے بیڑیوں میں، زہرا کا یہ گوہر ہے، مزدوروں نے جنازہ پھر بھی اٹھایا تیرا، پھر بھی اٹھایا تیرا، ہر لاش کربلا میں بے سایہ و سپر ہے، جکڑا ہے بیڑیوں میں، زہرا کا یہ گوہر ہے، حاجات ہر کسی کی ہو پوری تیرے در سے، ہو پوری تیرے در سے، حسنین مولا کاظم جود و سخا کا گھر ہے، جکڑا ہے بیڑیوں میں، زہرا کا یہ گوہر ہے، اور محمد و آل محمد سلام۔
Jazakallah khair, Brother Salman. One more loud salawat for him, please. Brothers and sisters, respects of Sayyid, Assalamu alaikum. Our condolences to the Imam of our time on the martyrdom of Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Before I invite the Sayyid for his speech for tonight, just a few announcements, inshallah. This upcoming Wednesday, there will be a program, February 7th, for the celebration of the Bi'thah of the Holy Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli ala. The program will start at 7 p.m. with Salatul Isha, followed by Quran, poetry, and mankabat. Speech at 7:30 by Sheikh Mehdi Rastani, with Niyaz to go at 8:30 p.m. Please note that there is no Du'a Komel program or Mizan class this upcoming Thursday. Friday, February 9th, there will be Jummah Salat. Adhan will be at 12:42 p.m. and Khutbah by Sheikh Mehdi Rastani. Friday evening, February 9th, there will be a Seekers Club at 7 p.m. at the Dallas Youth Group Lounge at 2640 Old Denton Road. The age range for this is for brothers and sisters from the ages of 17 to 40. Please look out for upcoming messages for more information about the program. Please note, inshallah, next week, February 12th through 14th, there will be a 3-night Jashan-e-Sha'ban. Our guest speaker for those 3 nights will be Sheikh Kazim Khoja. Please look for the WhatsApp messages for more details. Before I invite the Sayyid for his speech for tonight, There is a request for Surah Fatiha for the sponsors of tonight, for the marhumin of the sponsors of tonight, for the family of Sayyid Muhammad Akbar, father of Sayyid Akbar and father-in-law of Safiya Akbar. And also please include your own marhumin and mu'minat and those of the Muslim Ummah. At this time, I'd like to invite Sayyid for his speech for tonight and request the brothers and sisters to move as close to the member as possible with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
That's good. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal mursaleen Abil Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. If I can request brothers and sisters to move forward. Tafaddal, Shaykhana. Shaykh Saadi entered the gathering and he made my job a little bit more difficult tonight, but inshallah, with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Tonight we commemorate the shahadat of our seventh Imam, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim alayhi salam. We have several records and several letters and several speeches from the life of Imam al-Kadhim. Amongst these letters and amongst these traditions from Imam al-Kadhim is a very important document, which is the Wasiyya of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. And there's different Wasiyya that he did give. But before we get into the Wasiyya of Imam al-Kadhim, what does this word Wasiyya mean? The Quran uses this word Wasiyya in two different ways. The first way that this word Wasiyya is used when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to admonish the believers. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to encourage the believers to do something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ إِحْسَانًا, that we entrust and we enjoin and we highly encourage humans to what? To show kindness, to display kindness to their parents. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then singles out especially the mother. حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا, that during these 9 months of pregnancy, the mother is carrying the child, going through so much difficulty. وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرْهًا, and she delivers you and me and all of humanity with so much difficulty and so much hardship. And so because of this hardship that she undertook, in which she became weaker and weaker, in order to give her newborn the strength, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding the believers that we must go and show kindness and deference and respect to her. This is the first meaning of Wasiyya, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is highly encouraging. Another definition, another usage that we find in the Quran is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this is a type of written will or a testimony or the final words that a person utters before they leave this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذَا حَضَرَ أَحَدَكُمُ الْمَوْتِ إِن تَرَكَ خَيْرًا الْوَصِيَّةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it obligatory that if we come to the end of our lives, that we should leave behind a testimony, we should leave behind a final will for his close family members. لِلْوَالِدَيْنَ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Just like we're commanded that during our lifetimes that we live with our family members with ma'ruf, when we depart this world, when we give our final wishes, then those same principle is being used, bil ma'ruf, and do this in an honorable manner. And so this wasiyah which we give at the end of our lives, it's based off of righteousness. Sometimes people, they have this misplaced sense of righteousness. They have this misplaced sense of doing what is good. And they think that this wealth that we're leaving behind, that we should go and we should give it to all of these different charitable organizations, and they don't give it to their close family members. And this is a misplaced sense of righteousness, a misplaced sense of ma'ruf. We have certain rules, we have certain principles that when the inheritance is being done, then we need to go and we need to abide by that. If a person has some missed prayers, if at the end of their lives they were sick, or for example, they couldn't pray or they couldn't fast, or if they have a loan or they borrowed something from someone else, all of these things, they need to be written down so that their folder can be closed before they depart this world. And this is extremely important because if in this day and age we don't leave a wasiyah, then it goes to civil court. And the judge comes and distributes the assets in the way that he deems it to be just and fair. And a lot of times this unfair distribution of assets goes in contradiction to our Islamic law, and it could result in conflict and disagreement. So although it is not wajib, however, in some cases it becomes wajib, that we must leave this behind. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Just like when we're alive, we want to run our lives in a manner in which we deem it is suitable. Afterwards, after we leave this dunya, whatever property and whatever belongings we have, we also want to make sure that's distributed fairly. And this is where the function of wasiyah comes, that we leave for our family members, that they administer these belongings in a manner which is fair. One of the blessings that we have is that we should have a good family, that when we leave this wasiyah, that they carry out our final wishes. And this is truly one of the greatest blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we have a righteous family, that we have a pious family, that these hopes and these commands which we've written in this wasiyah, that my child or my children or my grandchildren or my brother or whoever of my family members will go and execute these. This is because one of the most difficult stages, or the most difficult stages in a person's life, is when they're leaving this world. When we're leaving this world, we're entering into a different realm. And for most of us, it's going to be very difficult. It's not going to be an easy transition. And so when we leave this dunya, we have a lot of hope placed in our loved ones. We have a lot of hope placed in our children or in our sons and our daughters, and that we hope and we pray that they can send something forth for us. Because now we can no longer do good deeds. We're now fully dependent on the family members to send forth for us these type of things. We require recitation of the Quran. We require fasting. We require charity to be given on our behalf. So it's hoped that whatever we write in this wasiyah, that our children don't forget us, that our children don't neglect us. A lot of times the thing that we remember the most is the last memory we've had with that person. So as a person's leaving this dunya and giving this wasiyah to them, it stays in that person's heart. When Lady Zahra salamullahi alayha, when she was leaving this world, she called Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib and she gave her final wasiyah. And she says that, إِذَا أَنَا مِتُّ, that when I die, فَتَوَلَّ أَنْتَ غُسْلِي, that go and I want you to take the responsibility of doing my ghusl. وَجَهِّزْنِي, and the tajheez and the funeral rites that need to be taken place, and make sure that you take care of that. وَصَلِّي عَلَيَّ, and pray upon me. وَأَنزِلْنِي قَبْرِي, and bring me down into my grave. وَلِحِدْنِي وَصَوِّئْ تُرَابْ عَلَيَّ, and pour the dirt upon me. And then after all of these are done, she says, وَجْلِسْ إِنْدَ رَأْسِي قَبَالَةَ وَجْهِي, then sit at my grave for a little bit. Sit by the head of the grave facing me. فَأَكْثِرْ مِنْ تَلَاوَةِ الْقُرْآنِ, and excessively recite the Quran with dua, and make dua at that point. And the reason why, she says, فَإِنَّهَا سَاءَةٌ يَحْتَاجُ الْمَيِّتْ فِيهَا إِلَىٰ أُنْسِ الْأَحْيَاءِ, because at that moment, when a person leaves this dunya, they're in desperate need for dua, for prayers, for recitation of the Quran. So the opportunity to recite these type of things are in the wasiyah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. As parents, as individuals, we all have hopes and aspirations for others. And especially when it comes to our children. We want our children to be a certain way. We want our children to do certain things, to practice religion. We want our children to be righteous. We want our children to stay away from misdeeds, from acts of disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is an opportunity where a person, before they depart this world, they give some of the most important lessons in their lives. They lived 70, 80 years in this world, and they've seen through the glitter of this world. They've seen through the allure of this world. They've experienced everything in this world. And whatever they arrive at, this is the crux of their life. This is the summary, the synopsis of what they've arrived from life. And so when we come to the different wasiyya from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, they emphasize what? They emphasize tawheed. They emphasize the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They emphasize having a deep and proper understanding of religion. They emphasize that go and spend a part of your day in seeking knowledge, that go and fast and pray and engage in Quranic recitation. And so these are things that we need to keep in mind, that as we approach and move forward in our lives, this is a responsibility that we have, that we should prepare for this wasiyya. This wasiyya is going to be the most important and final message that we leave for our family members. From the life of Imam Al-Kadhim, we have 4 different reports of these wasiyya or these wasiyya which have come from him. The first of this final testimony is this wasiyya which Imam Al-Kadhim gave to his son, Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam. And another wasiyya that we have from Imam Al-Kadhim is one which he gave to his other children, besides the 8th Imam. And then the third wasiyya is a general testimony, a general final will, which he gave to the larger community, to the believers. And then there's a 4th wasiyya, which is found in our books, which is a wasiyya, a final testimony, which he gives to Hisham ibn Hakam. And inshallah, we'll talk about Hisham ibn Hakam, this prominent, this learned personality and companion of Imam as-Sadiq and Imam Al-Kadhim. But before we get into the contents of what is in this wasiyya, we want to find out who Hisham ibn Hakam is. One of the most interesting topics that we have is the history of these companions. How did these companions come to be such great giants in our religion? When we look at some of the companions of Imam al-Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq, and Imam al-Kadhim, we find them to be at the highest level of knowledge and scholarship. They are giants when it comes to ilm. And these were the individuals who were the closest to the Imam. And this is an important point for us to remember, that if we want closeness to the Imam, if we want proximity to the Imam, it's not based off of love. Love, of course, is an important aspect, and we need to have love for the Imams. But when we look at the history of these companions, those companions who were the closest to the Imam were those who had higher levels of knowledge, those who possessed more knowledge. And this is the principle for what proximity to Ahlul Bayt are, is how much knowledge we have and how much scholarship we have. The Imam, he would bring in people who were experts in their field. Imam, he would have discussions. Some of these discussions would be general discussions for the public. Anybody could attend. And then there were other gatherings which were for the elite, which were for the scholarly amongst the community. Imam wouldn't go and discuss, certain things in those public gatherings. But when he's in those intimate gatherings with those scholars, in those discussions, Imam would say certain secrets. And so, in order for us to get close to the Imams, it is contingent upon the amount of knowledge that we have. And so we have different traditions that talk about when different scholars and different individuals would come to the Imam from different religions and different denominations. And they would come to the Imam and they would challenge him to a debate. They would bring up a topic and they would say, "We want to debate you." And Imam, he would very politely say to them that, "No, I'm not engaging, I don't want to engage in this debate, but there is this companion of mine. Go to this companion of mine and have this discussion with him." And at times the Imam would sit there and watch and hear this debate and oversee and train them that, make sure you say this, don't say this, speak in this manner. And Imam would give them specific instructions in how to engage with different types of people. The general rule, which I found in this hadith, that the Imams, they would forbid people from going and engaging into these technical discussions. The vast majority of the community, they shouldn't go and engage in these debates, in these polemics. The hadith says, "Nahana anil kalam," that the Imam forbade us from entering into these type of discussions, except for only a certain few. Why? Because the vast majority of people, when it comes to these matters, they're not equipped enough. They don't have that deep level of knowledge. They can listen to a lecture and they may think that, okay, we understand the topic well. But in order for preparation of a lecture, hours and hours go in. There's a lot of background which goes in order to be able to deliver a lecture. Just listening to one lecture or listening to a few lectures about one topic, it's not possible that we become an expert in that. And so the Imam, he gave this general ruling that don't go and engage into these type of discussions. One, because you're not equipped with the proper amount of knowledge. But two, you may not have the proper akhlaq. You may speak harshly. You may get too emotional. And instead of bringing the person closer to you, what happens? You move them away. You discourage them from accepting the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It's reported in Rijal Kishi, one of our prominent books of Ilm Rijal, that there was this private gathering. And in this private gathering, there were some of the top Shia scholars. And in this gathering, Imam was speaking to them when a person from Sham, when a person from Damascus wanted to come and enter into this gathering. So he comes and he seeks permission from the Imam. And so Imam, he grants him permission. And so he enters the gathering and he tells, the Imam tells this man that sit down. And then he asks the Imam that, Ma hajatuk, what is your need from me? And then the man from Damascus, he says, Balagani annaka alim bi kulli ma tus'al. I've learned and I've become acquainted with you that you are a scholar. And whatever question that is asked, you have an answer from it. And so I came here li'unadirak, so that I can engage in a debate with you. And so the Imam responds to him and says, what do you want to debate in? And so he says, fil Qur'an. I want to debate in the Qur'an. وَقَطْعِهِ وَإِسْكَانِهِ وَخَفْضِهِ وَنَسْبِهِ وَرَفْعِهِ. All the i'rab and the different, the signs that are there, the tashdid. I want to debate with you when it comes to this topic. So Imam, he calls one of his companions who's sitting there in that gathering. He says, Ya Humran dunak rajul. Ya Humran, come and engage with this person and have a debate with this person. And so the person from Damascus says to him that, Innama uriduka ant. That I've come from this long distance because I want to have this discussion with you. La Humran. I don't want to go and have a discussion with Humran. I want to have a debate with you. And so this level of scholarship, we can see what level they're at by how the Imam, he responds. فقال, he says, In ghalabta Humran, faqad ghalabtani. He said, if you go and defeat Humran, then know you've defeated me. If you're able to engage in a debate and Humran cannot answer you, cannot respond to you, and you're able to give him such a response that he admits to defeat, then know that you have also defeated me. This is the level of trust that the Imam had in his companions. So this person began debating with Humran, and he asked question after question, and Humran was able to answer each and every one of his questions. When finally he was exhausted, he wasn't able to ask any more questions because they were all answered satisfactorily. So then the Imam asked him that, how did you see this companion of mine? And he says that this is a very skilled, very competent scholar and debater. And so he says that whatever I asked him, he had a response for me. And so then he continues. This man who was here, he wanted to now begin another debate. He wanted to bring up another topic. He lost that first round. Now let's bring up another topic and see what happens this time. And this is a good quality that he had, because his intention was good, as we'll find out at the end of the story, that the motive for why he was engaging in a debate was not because he was a quarrelsome person. He didn't go there to go and engage in a debate for no reason. No, he wanted to go and he wanted to gain knowledge. And so this persistence that he had was not to go and become an argumentative person. Sometimes people, they engage in arguments. Why? In order to go and defeat the other person. And they change topics. Why? Because I lost that one, so let me change the topic to something else. Maybe I won't lose in this one. And so this is what this person was doing, but he had a different motive. And so he says that I want to debate with you when it comes to the Arabic language. And so the Imam, he calls Aban ibn Taghlib, another companion. He says, go and answer his questions and go and engage in a debate with him. And Aban ibn Taghlib was able to also defeat him. And then he says, Urid an unadirika fil fiqh. I want to come and debate you when it comes to fiqh, to Islamic laws. So the Imam, he called Zurara. Oh, Zurara, come and have this debate with this person. And Zurara is able to defeat him. And then he says, I want to debate you in kalam when it comes to these theological issues. And so then the Imam, he calls Mu'min al-Taq, another companion, and they engage in a debate and they go back and forth, and Mu'min al-Taq, this companion of Imam, is able to defeat him. And then he says that I want to debate you in istita'ah, this qudra, this concept, this idea, does the human beings have free will, or they're predestined to do certain things. And so he calls another companion by the name of Tayyar, and they engage in a debate, and Tayyar is able to defeat this man from Sham, from Damascus. And then he says, okay, one more topic, fit Tawheed. What does Tawheed mean? What are the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And he calls Hisham ibn Salim, and Hisham ibn Salim is able to defeat him. And then finally he says one more topic. And this was perhaps the most contentious topic of that time. He says that Urid an unadirka or atakallam fil imama. I want to have a debate with you in regards to imama, in regards to this divine leadership, position of leadership. And this sensitive issue, the Imam calls on Hisham ibn al-Hakam. And he says, Hisham, come and address this person's concerns. And so Hisham begins his debate with him, and he's able to effectively express all of his ideas. He had so much confidence that was exuding from him that this person from Damascus, his mouth had just dropped open. He couldn't respond to anything. His companion was using such compelling evidence and such logical reasoning that this person he admitted to defeat. And finally, the man, he was left defeated, and he had no more words to utter. And then he turns to the Imam, and the Imam is smiling. فَضَحَكَ. And so the Imam is smiling. حَتَّى بَدَتْ نَوَاجِذُهُ. The Imam had this huge smile on his head and on his face that all of his teeth were being displayed. And after Hisham concluded his comments, the Imam was smiling. He became so elated. Why? Because the truth had triumphed over falsehood. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. At that moment, Imam, he became so happy, he became so prideful that my Shia are at this level, that any topic you can bring forth, they can come and they can defend their position. And they will defeat anybody who's a challenger. And this is important for us to remember, that when it comes to our religion, when it comes to our beliefs, that we shouldn't have superficial, we shouldn't have shallow knowledge. We should have a deeper knowledge of our beliefs and principles. And so this person from Sham says to the Imam that, كَأَنَّكَ أَرَدْتَ أَن تُخْبِرَنِي. It seems as if you just wanted to show me أَنَّ فِي شِيَتِكَ مِثْلَ هَؤُلَاءِ الرِّجَالِ. It seems as if you just wanted to show me that amongst your Shia and amongst your followers, you have these great, towering individuals with so much knowledge and information. So the Imam says, هُوَ ذَلِكَ. Yes, for this reason. And then the Imam begins to praise this companion, Hisham ibn al-Hakam. He says, أَمَّا Hisham ibn al-Hakam فَتَكَلَّمَ بِالْحَقِّ. He says this companion spoke with the truth, not spoke the truth. تَكَلَّمَ بِالْحَقِّ. With the help of the one who, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he spoke the truth. فَمَا سَوَّغَكَ بِرِيخِكَ. And this person, Hisham, he spoke with such brilliance and such intelligence that he left you bedazzled and you were completely speechless. And so this person was amazed by these companions of the Imam. And then the Imam, he continues, he says, my brother from Sham, my brother from Damascus, إِنَّ اللَّهَ أَخَذَ ذِقْثًا مِنَ الْحَقِّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took a portion of truth. وَذِقْثًا مِنَ الْبَاطِلِ. And he took a portion of falsehood and he mixed it up. ثُمَّ أَخْرَجَهُمَا إِلَى النَّاسِ. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presented it to human beings. And so when truth and falsehood becomes mixed up with one another, it becomes difficult for us to determine what is truth and what is false. And then he says, ثُمَّ بَأَثَ أَنْبِيَاءَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't leave mankind like this, in a state of unsurety, not in indecisiveness. What is truth, what is false? No, he then sent prophets and messengers, and he taught them what is the truth. And he sent them so that they can come and teach mankind what truth was. And then not only did Allah stop there, and then he also sent Wasiyya. He sent successors to the Prophet to continue this guidance for mankind. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This person was flabbergasted. He was at a loss of words. And then he said, قَدْ أَفْلَهَ مَنْ جَالَسَكَ. He says, whoever comes and sits with you, Imam, that person is triumphant. And so the Imam, he responds by saying, كَانَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ يُجَالِسُهُ جِبْرَائِيل وَمِيكَائِيل وَإِسْرَافِيل. That Jibra'il and Mikail and Israfil, they used to go and sit with the Prophet. يَسْعَدُ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ. When the Prophet would go up into the heavens. فَيَأْتِيهِ الْخَبَرُ مِنَ الْجَبَّارِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would send knowledge and information through these angels, and they would give it to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. فَإِنْ كَانَ ذَلِكَ كَذَلِكَ فَهُوَ كَذَلِكَ. And if this is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sought to guide people, then this is the only way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sought guidance for mankind. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And so this person, he was transformed. He transformed so quickly. He says to the Imam, "Ij'alni min shi'atik wa'allimni." Oh Imam, I want to become one of your Shia, and I want you to teach me. And here Imam says to Hisham ibn Hakam, he says, "Allimhu fa inni uhibbu an yakuna tilmadan lak." That Hisham, go and take the responsibility of teaching this person. And I'm giving you the responsibility to be his teacher, and he will be your student. And then the narration continues that this person, although he was from Sham, from Damascus, far away, he came and he lived with Hisham ibn Hakam for a period of time. He would go to his classes, he would ask questions, and then finally he returned back to Sham. And every once in a while he would come and he would bring gifts for Hisham ibn Hakam, and Hisham ibn Hakam would reciprocate by giving him gifts back. Salawatullah Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we find this very common theme in the companions of the A'immah alayhim salam, that they had this spirit, that they had this thirst for seeking knowledge. And this was an important theme which led Hisham ibn Hakam to the path of the truth. Hisham ibn Hakam, he was born in Kufa in the 2nd century, and he was raised in a village called Wasit, which was somewhere between Basra and Kufa. And he wasn't initially a follower of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. He followed this other school of thought called, it was a form of Mu'tazili, in which they believed in determinism. But as a child growing up, he had this deep desire to go and learn new things. And as a child, he was very intelligent. And so those early days of Bani Abbas, they went and they translated a lot of works from foreign lands into Arabic language. And the purpose behind it was to keep the population, to keep the masses distracted. So books from Greece, China, other parts of the world, they would be translated into Arabic, and people would be busy with those type of things. When he became older, he began selling fabric, and this was his occupation. And then he moved to Baghdad. But he was always engaged in some type of learning endeavor. He would go to different scholars, he would sit, he would debate. When he came across his book about Greek philosophy, he disliked it so much that he wrote a book against Greek philosophy. One of the attributes that Hisham had when he was a young man was that he was extremely bold and rash. He was somebody who was a bit impudent, and he would engage in these type of debates, and he was very harsh. His uncle was a follower of Imam Sadiq, and his uncle, when he heard that his uncle goes and visits Imam Sadiq, he went to his uncle and asked him to introduce him to Imam Sadiq. And so his uncle said, "Well, I can only take you if Imam Sadiq gives me permission." So he goes to Imam Sadiq, and he was reluctant because he knew the rash nature of Hisham. Hisham wasn't a very polite person at this stage of his life. So he goes to Imam Sadiq, and Imam Sadiq gives permission. As his uncle was walking away from the house of Imam Sadiq, he began having second thoughts. He's like, who am I bringing to the house of Imam Sadiq? This young man who's rash, who's brazen, who's outspoken, I'm bringing him to the Imam. Perhaps this isn't a very good idea. So he goes back to the house of Imam Sadiq and said, this nephew of mine, he's very harsh. Maybe he shouldn't come to you. And so the Imam says to his uncle that, are you afraid that he will defeat me in a debate? Do you have doubt and conviction in me, in your Imam, that your nephew of mine is going to leave me speechless and I'm not going to be able to respond to him? And so he says, no, I don't have such a doubt in me. So then he brought Hisham ibn Hakam. And so Hisham ibn Hakam would come to Imam Sadiq, he would ask questions, Imam Sadiq would ask questions from him. And when he couldn't respond to Imam Sadiq's questions, he had no choice but to go back. He would tell the Imam that, let me think about these questions and I will come back to you with the answers. And so these gatherings, they would happen several times, one time, two times, three, four, happened several times, when finally Hisham said that, listen, the truth is with the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. The questions that you presented, I don't have satisfactory answers for it. You tell me what are the correct answers. And so Imam slowly, he would begin to teach him. And over time, Hisham, he became an expert in aqaid. And he would begin having debates about Tawheed and Sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he became a very close companion of Imam Sadiq. And then Imam Sadiq then gave him the responsibility that go to different cities and go and engage in this type of healthy debate. And so Hisham, he would travel to different cities, he would go to different schools and different institutes and different masajid, and he would engage in these debates. It's reported that he went and he had this debate with this person who would bring contradictions about the Quran. And so Hisham, being a scholar in his own right, is able to answer many of these contradictions. But one contradiction that this person brought forth, he wasn't able to answer. And this person was in a faraway land. And so because he couldn't respond to this contradiction, he went back from that city all the way to Medina, and he asked Imam al-Sadiq about this verse in the Quran. And when Imam al-Sadiq gave him the answer, he was pleased with the answer, and he went back to that person who challenged him. And he said the correct answer for this contradiction is this. And so this person was surprised. He said, where did you get this knowledge from? He said, I got this knowledge from the spring of Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. And so this is an important lesson, that whenever we have doubts in our faith, and doubt is a natural part of the human experience. Sometimes we're not sure about certain things. Don't let that doubt linger for a long period of time. Go and seek the answer. Go and read a book. Go and ask questions. Go and sit with a scholar. Try to go and do some research to go and find the proper answer for that doubt which is there. A lot of times if these doubts are left unanswered, then another doubt comes, then another doubt comes. And what happens? Eventually our faith and our conviction and our religion, it goes away. Whenever we have doubts, we should go and seek the proper answers and seek the proper recourse for it. And so this is the property, this is the attribute that Hisham had in his life, that he would seek knowledge. And he would seek knowledge in a manner which he was convinced, in a rational manner, in a logical manner. And if a person does this with sincerity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow the springs of knowledge and wisdom to flow from such a person. And so this is an important lesson for us from the life of Hisham, that a part of our day, that we should spend in seeking some form of knowledge, whether listening to a lecture, whether listening to a speech, whether reading some books, or reading some ahadith of the Ahlul Bayt. It's an obligation for us. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It was during the time of Hajj when there was a lot of congestion and a lot of people in the city of Makkah. And Imam, he would have these different gatherings. People would come and visit the Imam, and they would come and they would have discussions with him. One of these gatherings that the Imam had was with these top Shia scholars. And Imam was sitting with these companions and he was discussing some of these issues when Hisham ibn Hakam, he entered. And Hisham ibn Hakam is a very young man. And he enters into the gathering, and this is, imagine a gathering where there's old Maraja. And the top Marja says, come and sit next to me. And so this is what the Imam did to Hisham. That all of these other companions and all of these other scholars who are there, they're all sitting there. But he tells Hisham to enter the gathering, and he sat him right next to him. So perhaps some of the other companions, they thought that, who is this young man that the Imam is showing so much respect? Perhaps it's some type of formality or something like that. When Imam saw the bewilderment on their faces, Imam says about Hisham ibn Hakam, he says, هَذَا نَاصِرُنَا. This is our helper. بِقَلْبِهِ وَلِسَانِهِ وَيَدِهِ. This is our helper through his heart, through his tongue. And so, perhaps some of them were thinking that maybe this is a formality. Then the Imam tells him that sit down and go and explain the different sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the different attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hisham ibn Hakam, because now he's being trained in the school of Ahlul Bayt, he has this adab and this civility. And he says to the Imam, how can I speak in your presence? The Imam insisted. And so Hisham ibn Hakam, he started speaking about the deeper meanings of Tawheed, about the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those top scholars were impressed that even such a man at such a young age is able to speak with knowledge. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. After the shahadat of Imam al-Sadiq, he goes to Imam al-Kadhim, he gives him allegiance. And when Imam al-Kadhim saw his level of knowledge, Imam then gave him a responsibility. And this responsibility that he was tasked with was that he should go and support financially the community. Imam understood that in order for a community to flourish, in order for a community to move forward, it needs to have financial security. Imam would give him large sums of money and would say, go and engage in business and take a little bit for you and go and help the other Shia in the community. Our religion is not just a religion which we want spiritual well-being and spiritual security. Of course, that's a very important aspect. But at the same time, a person should be financially independent. A person should have financial well-being. And this is a lesson for us being part of a community. We should be concerned of the spiritual well-being of others, but also the financial well-being. See if another person in the community requires some type of help. Maybe there's an opportunity in our community, in our companies, to go and help someone in our community. This is one of the teachings that Imam Al-Kadhim, he gives us. Try to raise the level of the financial status of the community. Imam himself would give him, and according to this one report, he gave him 15,000 dirhams. And he said, go and make a profit out of this money and help the other poor Shia in the community. He was such a close confidant of Imam Al-Kadhim that whenever it came to any need of the Shia community, he would tell the Shias to go to Hisham ibn Hakam, and Hisham ibn Hakam would be able to resolve that. Not only that, because he became so close to Imam Al-Kadhim, Imam Al-Kadhim would tell him at certain times, speak about a topic. And at certain times, don't speak about a topic. At times, the Imam would say, don't even go have debates. Stay away from the public sphere. When the third Abbasid Khalifa came into power, he felt threatened. Anybody who disagreed with him would be put in prison. So Imam Al-Kadhim told Hisham ibn Hakam that don't engage in these public debates anymore. Stay in your house or go engage in the financial building of the community, and don't go have these debates. And so we find that there's different debates that Hisham ibn Hakam had. One of the debates that Hisham ibn Hakam had was with the Mu'tazilis. And in this debate, the Mu'tazili scholar said the reason why our school of thought is correct and why your school of thought is incorrect, he says that our school of thought is correct because kithratuna, because we are the majority and you are the minority. And so the minority, usually they're the ones who make the mistake. And the majority, well, look at our numbers. Our numbers are larger. And so because our numbers are under truth. And so Hisham ibn Hakam, he responds to him. He said, if you utter these words, then no, you're also attacking Nabi Nuh. Nabi Nuh, he propagated religion for 950 years. And how many followers did he have? He had only except just a few followers. So he's teaching this important principle that when you want to see the truth, don't look at the numbers. Don't look at the majority. Go and use your intellect to determine what is the truth. In another tradition, Hisham ibn Hakam, he says a person shouldn't be deceived by excessive words. Don't look at the amount of books which are written. Don't look at the amount of arguments which are brought. You know, when we look at, for example, in this country, the dominant religion is Christianity. And sometimes this is a challenge with our youth, that they have doubt within their own faith and their religion. Growing up in the society, they're the minority. But when a person goes and studies Christianity, they see that Christianity is not the same religion which Nabi Isa brought. It was actually a religion which was standardized by Paul, which many different new novel principles were brought much later, like the concept of Trinity. And so we have to make sure that when we have our faith, when we have our religion, it's based on intellect. It doesn't fluctuate with one person becoming Muslim. Sometimes it happens in our community that if a person becomes a Muslim, then our religious sentiment, it surges. We become more pious. If someone becomes a Shia, then all of us become excited. Or, if someone leaves Islam or someone leaves, practicing the faith, then our religious sentiment, it decreases. However, we as followers and we as lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, our faith and our religion should be founded. It should be grounded. It shouldn't fluctuate so easily. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Hisham ibn Hakam, he reached this level of popularity. He became a confidant of the Imam. And it's natural that when someone reaches that level, then feelings of envy and jealousy begin to arise. And so people began to spread rumors about this companion, that he's a heretic, he's no longer a true follower of the Imam, that he's against the Imam, his beliefs are deviated. And so one of the companions, he goes to Imam Rida alayhi salam, and he asks him about this person. He said, do you support or do you condemn Hisham ibn Hakam? And the response that Imam Rida gave was that, go and love Hisham. Whatever he says to you, act upon it. Not only that, but go and tell all of the Shias to love Hisham ibn Hakam. And that tell the other Shia that the Imam is ordering you to have the wilayat and love of Hisham in your heart. And so Hisham ibn Hakam, his name had spread very far and wide. He had a position in the Abbasid government where he was the official debater, an individual by the name of Yahya Barmaki. He was part of the Abbasid government and he would organize these different types of debates. And initially he went and he showed kindness to Hisham ibn Hakam, but after a period of time he became envious. And he came up with this plan to have Hisham ibn Hakam killed. And so when he came up with this idea, he came up with this plan by going to the Khalifa of the time, Harun. And he told Harun that this person, Hisham ibn Hakam, he's actually not a supporter of yours. He's actually a lover of Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam. And he believes that there is another Imam who is mafrood al-ta'a, who it is obligatory for us to follow. And if he believes that if that Imam told him to rebel and to stand up against the government, then he will do so. And so Harun al-Rashid, he tells Yahya, go and organize a debate. And in this debate, I'm going to be listening and bring up this topic of imama. But I'm going to be listening behind a parda, behind something where they cannot see me, but I can hear everything. And so Yahya, he goes and he organizes this debate. He calls different scholars, and he entered into this discussion of imama. And this discussion was going back and forth, until Hisham ibn Hakam, after much frustration, he tells Yahya that if Imam commanded me to do khuruj, if the Imam commanded me to rebel against the government, then I would obey him without any hesitation. When Harun, when he heard these words, he became terrified. He says that I will not allow Hisham to remain alive for 1 hour. His words are more penetrating. His words are more powerful than 100,000 soldiers. And so Harun, he gave the order that Hisham should immediately be arrested, and then he was banished. He was banished to Madain, and then Hisham, he eventually came back to Kufa, where he was a fugitive of the state, and eventually he left this world. When Hisham ibn Hakam, when he left this world, the news reached Imam Rida alayhi salam. And Imam Rida, at the loss of this great companion, at the loss of this great scholar, Imam Rida wept and wept. And he said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on his soul. He was benevolent, he was a caring servant and a true human being. People, they became jealous of him and tormented him due to their envy and jealousy. Salawatullah Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let's come to the wasiyya of that Imam Al-Kadhim had to Hisham ibn Hakam. So we now understand that Hisham ibn Hakam, he's not our ordinary companion. He's among the elite. And he's at the highest caliber of knowledge and piety and devotion to the Ahlul Bayt. So that when the Imam is speaking to him, Imam is speaking at that level. And so he begins his wasiyah. He says, Ya Hisham ibn al-Hakam, Inna Allah Azza wa Jal akmal al-nas al-hujaj bil-uqul. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completed human beings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala perfected human beings. How? By giving them intellect. And this intellect which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given is the most powerful proof in reaching conclusions. وَأَفْضَى إِلَيْهِمُ بِالْبَيَانِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave human beings the ability to speak, the ability to communicate. And through this power of speaking is a person able to understand the truth. وَدَلَّهُمْ عَلَى رُبُوبِيَّتِهِ بِالْأَدِلَّةِ. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He guided mankind through His lordship, to his rububiyyah, with proofs and clear evidence. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the Quran, وَإِلَهَكُمْ إِلَهٌ وَاحِدٌ. Your God is one God. لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ الرَّحْمَنُ الرَّحِيمُ. And then He continues, إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ إِلَىٰ قَوْلِهِ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. He says there are a multitude number of signs in creation. And all of these creations, they point to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's a creator. A person, in order to understand and to arrive at these higher level of truth, it requires application of the intellect. It requires reflection. He says, Ya Hisham, قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ ذَلِكَ دَلِيلًا عَلَى مَعْرِفَتِهِ. The way that we get that deep recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is by using our intellect. بِأَنَّ لَهُمْ مُدَبِّرًا. That all of this creation, all of this world which is there is a planner behind it. This universe, in terms of how it's functioning and operating, it's not happening in a haphazard manner. It's not happening in a careless manner. We don't believe that this universe came about in a chance manner. We believe that this universe, every moment that there's a Rabb who's doing tarbiyah of it, who's supporting and administering this. Just like, for example, we have this phone. This phone doesn't automatically evolve to the next one. S20 becomes S21, S22, S20. No. We believe that in order for these phones to develop, there are developers, there are engineers who are bringing new models, who are allowing this to evolve. The same way this universe is constantly changing, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the planner behind it. In order for this earth to be a life-inhabiting planet, there are more than 200 constants which are constantly being maintained. And if these constants, even if there's a small fluctuation, even if in the slightest manner these constants, they change, then life on earth becomes uninhabitable. And so this earth is fine-tuned and tailored for life. even a marginal error that may happen in these constants, then life on this earth is impossible. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, and this is the wasiyya which He's giving to Hisham. He says, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in your disposal all of these things so you can come to His recognition, not so that you can become distracted in these mundane, worldly things. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمِ يَعْقِلُونَ. There are signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for people who apply their intellect. For people who apply their reason, they can see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. So beautifully Imam Husayn says in Dua Arafah, أَمْيَتْ عَيْنٌ لَا تَرَاكَ. The eye which does not see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is blind. And then he continues, he says, Ya Hisham, O Hisham, مَا قُسَّمَا بَيْنَ الْعِبَادِ أَفْضَلْ مِنَ الْأَقْلِ. That there is nothing more superior that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equipped in a human being than a person's aql, than a person's intellect. نَوْمُ الْآقِلِ أَفْضَلْ مِنْ سَحْرِ الْجَاهِلِ. The sleep of a person who's aql, of a person who's intelligent, is better than the waking hours of an ignorant person. And he says, مَا بَعَثَ اللَّهُ نَبِيًّا إِلَّا آقِلًا. That every prophet and every angel and messenger that was sent upon this earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them aql, gave them intelligence. If the best blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give to the best of His creations, the best of His blessing is intellect. Just so beautifully, Imam Sadiq, he explains that this aql, this intellect, what is the purpose behind it? What are we supposed to use it for? He says this, someone came to Imam Sadiq and asked him, Mal aql, what is the intellect? And the Imam, he responds in such a beautiful manner. He says, Ma ubida bihi ar-Rahman wa ktusaba bihi al-Jinan. The purpose of the intellect is what? The purpose of the intellect is to arrive at the truth. The purpose of the intellect is to uncover the truth. And he says the highest truth that a person can uncover is that there is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That there is no greater truth than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that there is no life better than the life of ubudiyyat. There is no life better than a life which is serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when a person applies their intellect, when a person uses their intellect and arrives at this truth, what happens? The Imam says it results in ubudiyyah, it results in obedience, it results in worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَاكْتُسَبَ بِهِ الْجِنَانِ. Through the application of reason, through the application of an intellect, is a person able to acquire those higher stations in Jannah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The beginning part of the khutbah, the beginning part of the wasiyah, Imam talks about the importance of the intellect. But the intellect is not just a cerebral activity. It's not something that we just do mentally. No, this intellect, or the effects of this intellect, it comes down to our character. And the Imam explains, Ya Hisham, قِلَّةُ الْمَنْطِقِ حُكْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. He says, a person who's wise, a person who's intellectual, then they will speak less. فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِالصُّمْتِ. A person who's as intelligent, they don't unnecessarily talk. They don't express their opinion for every single thing. A person who speaks less, then it brings ease in their life, and it reduces disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes we find people, when they think that they're smart and intelligent, they have an opinion about everything. They can talk and talk and talk about every subject. But the Imam, what does he say? The Imam says, if it's not necessary for you to speak, don't speak. When you need to speak, look at your motive. If your motive is to speak the truth, to bring someone closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then speak. Otherwise, don't speak and keep quiet. Then the Imam, he says, Ya Hisham, if you must speak, if you are forced to talk, al-mutakallamun thalatha. Then the speaker is of three types. The first one is al-rabih. Then the second one, the profitable one. Then the second one is salim, the one who breaks even. And then the third one is shajib, the one who is delinquent. فَأَمَّا الرَّابِحِ, who is the one who is profitable when they speak? The Imam says, فَذَاكِرْ لِلَّهِ, the one who remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want to be profitable in your talk, then remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before you speak, remind yourself of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأَمَّا السَّالِمِ, the one who's safe, the one who breaks even, فَالسَّاكِت, the one who's quiet, the one who keeps quiet and doesn't say anything. وَأَمَّا الشَّاجِبِ, but who is the one who's delinquent? He says the one who is delinquent, فَالَّذِي يَخُوذُ فِي الْبَاطِلِ, the one who engages in falsehood. The one who hears everything and anything and goes and repeats it without validating it, circulates these rumors, circulates false information, who goes and causes problems and conflicts, who loves to see drama and tension. And then Imam says to Hisham, O Hisham, The Prophet has said that if you see a believer and that believer doesn't speak much, then go and get close to him, because this is the person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put guidance within him. He says, "Wal mu'min qalilul kalam." If you want to know a true mu'min, what is a sign of a true mu'min? Qalilul kalam. He speaks little. Wa kathirul amal. But his actions, his performance of good deeds are plentiful. Wal munafiq. Whereas a disbeliever, kathirul kalam, he speaks too much. Wa qalilul amal. And then after that, the Imam, he continues. And he gives this very beautiful, and I'll end with this part. He says, Ya Hisham. He says, Ya Hisham, la dina man la maruwa lah. This beautiful equation for our religion. This beautiful equation in order to arrive at those higher stations of Iman. He says, La dina liman la muruwa lah. The person who doesn't have any muruwa, doesn't have any religion. Wala muruwa liman la aqla lah. This concept of muruwa is a very important concept, because when a person applies their intellect, it doesn't just stay in their mind. It transcends into their actions. It transcends into their limbs. It transcends into their behavior. One of the places where it transcends is having this quality of muruwa. Different definitions are given for muruwa. There's a beautiful definition by Imam Ali, which is a general definition. He says, Al-muruwa ismun jami' li sa'il al-fada'il wal-mahasin. He says this concept of muruwa, which is there, it's a collective attribute for all merits and good qualities. A believer should always be striving to reach a higher level of faith. A person who's trying to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's never stagnant. We should always try to be inculcating better traits within ourselves. There are some people who say, and this is a sign of someone who doesn't have muruwa, that tell us what is the baseline minimum. Tell us what we need to get into Jannah. Just, we want both feet in Jannah and that's it. Don't tell us the akhlaqi answer. Don't tell us the answer of those who are at the 6th level of faith, the 7th level of faith. No, tell us the answer, which is the bare minimum for us to enter into Jannah. Salat is 17 rak'ah in one day. We're going to recite 17 rak'ah in one day. When it comes to ibadat, they have these type of things. But then also in their mu'amalat, they're like this. When it comes to their relationships, when it comes to their transactions, when it comes to their marriages, we're going to put the bare minimum which our al-Hakam says to us. Don't talk to us about akhlaq. Don't talk to us about higher principles. Tell me, what does the Tawdi al-Masail say? What does the Risala Amaliyah say? What is the bare minimum that I need to do for my wife? And that's the bare minimum I'm going to do. Giving the nafaqah. What is the bare minimum nafaqah? That's all I'm going to do. And so this is a sign of a lack of muruwa, a lack of intellect. And this is unfortunately an attitude that some religious people they have. The Imam is saying what? Imam is saying the one who doesn't have muruwa doesn't have any intellect. And the one who doesn't have this quality, they don't have any religion. There's another specific definition of muruwa. And the specific definition, or the fiqhi definition, is that anything which goes against the shan, the repute and the standard of a believer, it's considered to be munafiyatul muruwa. Something which is below the dignity of a mu'min. A mu'min has dignity. A mu'min has honor. A mu'min doesn't necessarily go and do everything which is halal. And the popular opinion among jurists is that if a person goes and engages in one of the munafiyat of muruwa, is that they're no longer just. They cannot go and lead prayers. So the traditional example, which is found in our books, is that if a person is walking on the streets and they're eating food, this goes against muruwa. It goes below the standard of a mu'min. And so some examples that we have in our day and age. If a person has a certain type of haircut, they have sometimes these zigzags in their hair. A mu'min doesn't engage in these type of things. Why? Because it goes against muruwa. If a person, for example, goes and dyes their hair blue or red or bleaches their hair, a mu'min, a believer, this is beneath him. He doesn't go and do these type of things. Sometimes, people, they put tattoos. Putting a tattoo on, applying a tattoo, a permanent tattoo, this is below the standard and dignity of a mu'min. If a person, for example, goes and wears slippers to work, I was going to say Crocs, but now, every day, Crocs has become mainstream. Everyone's wearing Crocs. But dressing in a manner which is not suitable. If someone comes into a gathering and they lie down, if they go and engage in these type of things, it's not in the shan. It's not appropriate. It's not befitting for a believer to engage in these type of things. So the Imam, he says this. He says, intellect leads to muruwa, and muruwa leads to religion. And so the Imam, he continues, and there's a lot of important gems inside of this. Imam, he expands on the concept of modesty, Then another important point that the Imam he emphasizes, he says that a person should not be immodest. They should have haya in their lives. And he mentions that this haya which is there is an important principle. A person should be between two sort of pillars. A person shouldn't care so much what other people think about them. And so they act in a manner constantly thinking what another person is thinking about me. Imam says this is a mistake. And then it shouldn't be on the other extreme, where a person doesn't care what other people think about him at all. No, a person should be in moderation, should be in balance in the way that they conduct themselves. They shouldn't be so fixated what other people think, and they shouldn't be so carefree in what other people think. There should be a moderation which is there. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And then he talks about a believer in aql. He says that a believer is true and authentic. A believer doesn't have two faces. A believer is not a munafiq. When he's with one group of people, he acts one way. When he's with another group of people, he acts another way. And then it's a very beautiful tradition, and I highly recommend that, it's a topic that we reflect over. And then the Imam, he has this beautiful one-liners where he says, Ya Hisham, man sadaqa lisanuhu zaka amalu. He says that a person who's honest in their words, their actions are purified. وَمَنْ حَسُنَتْ نِيَّتُهُ زِيدَ فِي رِزْقِهِ. A person who has a good niyyah and a good intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases them in rizq. وَمَنْ حَسُنَ بِرُّهُ بِإِخْوَانِهِ وَأَهْلِهِ مُدَّ فِي عُمْرِهِ. If a person has a good character, if a person looks after his brothers in faith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases his lifespan. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. After mentioning all of these things, and I've only mentioned a very small part of it, the Imam concludes the Wasiyya by saying, فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ. If a believer goes and does these types of things, performs these actions, uses his intellect, applies his intellect, reaches these higher levels of faith, the Imam gives a promise. يَكُونُ فِي الدَّرَجَةِ الْعُلْيَا. Then such a person will be at the highest level of Jannah. With who? مَعَ الْأَنْبِيَا وَالْأَوْسِيَا. With the prophets, with the messengers, with the successors, alayhim wassalam. And then he does dua, he says, وَفَّقَنَ اللَّهُ وَإِيَّاكُمْ لِطَاعَتِهِ. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us success and use success that we are able to engage in this worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so these messages, brothers and sisters, these are some of the most important messages that the Imam he leaves for the community. We know that the life of Imam Al-Kadhim, a very significant part of it, he spent in the prison. When Imam was released for a short period of time, he called Hisham and he delivered to him this Wasiyya, because he knew that in a very short period of time he's going to be placed in a dungeon, he's going to be placed in a prison, and that he's no longer going to have freedom. He entrusted Hisham ibn Hakam that take this message, take this final will of mine and go and deliver it to my Shia, because the Imam soon he will be alone, and the Imam is not going to have any helper nor any supporter. When we remember the Masa'ib of the children of Zahra, we see that they were afflicted with some of the worst punishments. The madhlumiyya of the Ahlul Bayt is something which is unparalleled. But one thing which strikes the hearts of the believers when they hear about the trials and tribulations of the Ahlul Bayt is the ghurba and the isolation and the solitude of the Ahlul Bayt. Because the Imam, he has a responsibility to guide people, and to be far away from his people, from his Shia, is more grievous than we can imagine. When we talk about Imam Al-Kadhim, we begin to understand a new dimension of ghurba. The Ahlul Bayt al-Nabi, how much ghurba they have seen. When we begin with Lady Zahra, the ghurbat of Zahra, where she has no supporters, where she sees no defenders of her father's religion. When we come to the ghurba of Ali, we see that after he's stripped of his right, no one stood for his right. No one stood to protect Islam. Imam had so few followers that Imam didn't have anyone to confide in. We come to the ghurbat of Imam Hassan, where his own followers were treacherous with him, where his own followers abandoned him. We remember the ghurbat of Imam Husayn when he was alone and desolate in the sands of Karbala, when Imam was thirsty and hungry with no helpers, with no one to answer his call. Imam, he looks left, he looks right, but no one is coming. Imam sees in front of him an army who's ready to attack him and rip him into pieces. Come to Imam Al-Kadhim and he gives us another meaning of ghurba. Imam Al-Kadhim is given a poison like the poison which was given to Imam Hassan, except that Imam Hassan had Zainab Zainab, at Kulthum, and Imam Husayn. Imam Hassan in his final moments had his family members, his children, his siblings. But our Imam, our seventh Imam, he was given that potent poison. And the ghurbat that he was facing, he was alone and abandoned. Imam had 17 children, but not one of his child was allowed to be with him. Imam had thousands and thousands of followers, but they were all waiting for him outside in the prison. Imam Al-Kadhim is put into prison, and this prison is like the same prison which Imam Sajjad is put in. Imam Sajjad had no roof over his head, so Imam Sajjad and the women, they would burn in the daytime due to the scorching sun, and at nighttime they would freeze to the cold. Imam's prison is so deep in the earth, the Imam would not know whether it is day or night. Imam at certain times he would gasp for air because it was so deep into the earth. Heavy chains were placed in the Imam, and these chains were pressing against the skin and body of the Imam to the extent that he was bleeding. We recite in the ziyarah of the Imam, وَصَلِّ عَلَى مُوسَى ibn Ja'far, salam to you, O our Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, al-mu'adhabi fi qa'r al-sujun, the Imam who was tortured and abused and tormented in the pit of a dungeon, وَظُلَمِ al-matamir, in the darkness of the prison cell, the saq al-mardud bihalq al-quyud, the Imam, his leg was bruised and wounded due to the tight chains that were holding him down and restricting him. Imam Kadhim was in that place for such a lengthy time that when people would come and see the Imam, they would not recognize him. They would say, "Ma dhaka thob?" What is that piece of garment lying on the ground? They said, that is the Imam. That is the Imam in the state of sujood. Every day from sunrise till dhuhr, Imam is in a state of sajda. This was the madhlumiyah, the ghurba of Imam Al-Kadhim. One of the companions by the name of Ali ibn Suwaid, he gets in touch with the Imam. He comes to the Imam, he says, "Sayyidi, mata al-faraj." Oh my Imam, my master, when is the faraj? When is the release? لَقَدْ ضَاقَتْ صُدُورَنَا. Our chests have become heavy. Oh Imam, you've been absent from us for so long that we cannot tolerate it anymore. The Imam says, "Al-faraj qareeb." The relief is near. Ibn Suwaid, he insists, "Mata Sayyidi, tell me when you are going to be released. Don't say it is near." But this relief that the Imam is talking about is different than the relief that Ali is requesting from. Imam is talking about al-faraj from this dunya. Imam is talking about relief from the dunya, from the prison, from the torment of this person. He says to Suwaid, to Ali ibn Suwaid, the day of Friday, come to the Jisr, come to the bridge in Baghdad. فَظَنَّ أَنَّ الْإِمَامِ سَيَفْرُغْ عَنْهُ يَوْمَ الْجُمَعَةِ. This companion thought that the Imam is going to be freed on Friday morning. He goes to all of the Shia. He goes and knocks on all the lovers of Imam Al-Kadhim. He says, our Imam is being released on Friday. After a long imprisonment, we will be able to see our Imam again. Imam is in prison when Sindi, that wretched and evil man, the enemy of the Ahlul Bayt, he brings a few dates dipped in poison and he offers it to the Imam. Imam, he takes a few dates and he stops eating. He says to the Imam to continue eating. The Imam says, what you have intended will take place. So slowly the poison is seeping through the body of the Imam. The Imam's color changes. He begins to weaken. He doesn't have any strength. For how many weeks Imam is in prison? He has lost all of its flesh. Imam is preparing to leave the world as the poison is spreading throughout the body. At the same time, this evil man Sindi, what does he do? He goes and he taunts Imam Al-Kadhim. هُوَ يَسْمَ أَخْشَنَ الْكَلَامُ وَأَغْلَدُهُ مِنْ Sindi. Imam has to go and listen to these vulgar words from Sindi. Sindi is using threats and profanity and insulting the father of the Imam and the forefathers. Imam, he raises his hand to the sky for his final dua. فَرَفَى بَابُ الْحَوَائِجْ يَدُهُ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ. He raises his hand and he does his dua. وَهُوَ فِي تِلْكِ الْحَالَةِ, until he loses his strength. ثُمَّ تَغَيَّرَ وَجْهُ الْإِمَامِ مِنْ لَوْنٍ إِلَى آخَرٍ. The color of the Imam begins to change. أَرَقَ جَبِينُهُ. The Imam's forehead begins to sweat. وَسَكَنَ أَنِينُهُ. The body parts of the Imam become still. وَمَدَّ يَدَيْهِ وَرِجْلَيْهِ. Imam, he extends
loosens his hands and feet. وَفَارَقَتْ رُوحُهُ الدُّنْيَا. On the 25th of Rajab, Imam's soul leaves the body. Ali ibn Suwaid, he calls the Shia to the bridge of Baghdad. They're waiting for the Imam. They're in a state of excitement and joy. They're wearing the best of clothes. When what do they see? They see after this long imprisonment, they see the janaza, the dead body, the lifeless body of Imam Al-Kadhim being brought out to the bridge of Baghdad. When they see the corpse of their Imam, their hearts bleed and they begin to cry and weep. For 3 days, the body of Imam Al-Kadhim was forced to remain on the bridge. It was left on the bridge to go and humiliate the Shia. Look at your Imam. He's exposed. He's thrown in public. Hada Imam al-Rafida. This is the Imam of the Rafida. Ali ibn Suwaid, he narrates that I came to see my Imam. وَإِذَا بِهِ سَيِّدِي وَمَوْلَاي Musa ibn Jafar. When I saw the Imam's body on the bridge, I began to call out, Wa Imama, Wa Kadhama, Wa Sayyida. When our Imam's body is taken out of the prison, Harun orders that the body be placed on the bridge of Baghdad. He orders the corpse of Imam Kadhim to be placed in chains and ropes so the Rafidis, so the Shia and the followers of the Imam can feel torment in their hearts. For 3 days, the body of Imam Al-Kadhim is left under the scorching sun. But my brothers and sisters, come to Karbala. Come to the plains of Karbala. This is Husayn, whose body has been detached from his body. This is Husayn, whose head has been raised on a spear. This is Husayn, who's left uncovered in the sun. This is the body of Husayn on the ground, on the burning sand of Karbala. This is the body of Husayn, which is wounded and crushed and trampled to an extent that it was unrecognizable. When Lady Zainab came to the body of Imam, she says to the body of the Imam, Anta akhi, are you truly my brother? Anta ibn walidi, are you the son of my father? Anta ibn Muhammad al-Mustafa, are you the grandson of Muhammad al-Mustafa? Anta Ali ibn al-Murtada, are you the son of Ali ibn Murtada? Anta ibn Fatima al-Zahra, are you truly the son of Fatima al-Zahra? Zainab, she cries out, Hada Husayn murammilu bid-dama muqatti al-a'dha. This is the body of Husayn mixed with sand and blood. This is the body of Husayn whose limbs are crushed and mangled. This is the body of Husayn which is left unrecognizable on the sands of Karbala. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Bab al-Hawa'ij, Imam al-Kadhim, that whatever difficulties and hardships and trials that we're facing, that bihaqqi Bab al-Hawa'ij, that Allah resolves them. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of those who are sick, all of those who are ill, that Allah grants them health and recovery through Bab al-Hawa'ij. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this Imam to rectify for us our beliefs and to apply our intellect. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bihaq Bab al-Hawa'ij to make our akhlaq and to make our manners reflective of our Imams. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bihaq Bab al-Hawa'ij to instill within us the teachings of Imam al-Kadhim and allow us to live lives which reflect the teachings of the Imam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to never separate us from the Ahlul Bayt, neither in this world nor the Akhirah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the company of the Ahlul Bayt and allow us to be in the presence of Ahlul Bayt in this dunya and the Akhirah. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون.
Ya Babe Havaij Mawla, 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 Ya اجمالا یا باب ہوا اجمالا اجمالا مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پہ کاظم کا جنازہ ہے مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پہ کاظم کا جنازہ ہے مزدور کا جنازہ ہے بغداد کے قیدی پہ بغداد کے قیدی پہ زندان بھی روتا ہے مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پہ کاظم کا جنازہ ہے مزدوروں کے کاظم کا جنازہ ہے اس درد نے تربت میں سجاد کو تڑپایا زندہ سے نکل کر بھی آزاد نہ ہو پایا ہے پہلا جنازہ جو زنجیروں میں جکڑا ہے مزدور ہے مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پہ ہے زنجیروں کو تکتی ہے شانوں کو ہلاتی ہے میت کو کبھی اپنی گودی میں اٹھاتی ہے ایک ہاتھ ہے پہلو پہ لگتا ہے یہ زہرا ہے مزدوروں نازا ہے مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پہ ہے کہتی ہے کوئی بی ہے وقت مصیبت کا اب جلد مدینے سے آ جائے رضا جا بے گورو کفن کب سے بیٹا تیرا بابا ہے مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پہ ہے مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پہ شبیر کی غربت کا نوحہ یہ سناتے ہیں سوکھے ہوئے لب اس کے امت کو بتاتے ہیں اس نے بھی دم آخر پانی نہیں پایا ہے مزدوروں کے کا جنازہ ہے مزدور کاظم کا ہے غربت ہے تکلم یہ شبیر کی غربت سی ایک بیٹی ہے یثرب میں صغرا کی طرح اس کی اس واسطے میت کا رخ سوئے مدینہ ہے مزدور دو پہ کاظم کا جنازہ ہے مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پہ کاظم کا جنازہ ہے اللہم صلی علی محمد
السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا نبي الله. السلام عليك يا خير خلق الله. السلام عليك يا محمد بن عبد الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعل الله الآخر أهدي مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحابه. السلام عليكم يا أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك، واجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.